Namaskar. In this episode of Dil Se, we're going to talk about something that impacts the future of India. We're going to talk about the role of religion and how religion and politics now have no contours which are different, and how religion has merged with politics. What that will do for our country, how that will impact the future of India, are issues that we need to discuss. And I can't possibly think of any other person than Dr. Shashi Tharoor to start that conversation with him. Now, if I were to start introducing Dr. Shashi Tharoor, if I may call him Shashi, it's going to take the whole morning, because the things that he has done in the short career, both in politics and as a bureaucrat, are something that are unmatched. He was Under Secretary General in the United Nations serving Kofi Annan. He has written about 25 books, both fiction and non-fiction. He is, countries have recognized his contribution. He is an extraordinary, talented human being. This is going to be his fourth term as Member of Parliament. And I could go on and on, but of course, this also happens to be his birthday. So happy birthday, Shashi.
Thank you, Kapil.
Let me start this conversation by asking you, why and how has religion become so important in the politics of India?
Well, in a sense, it's always been important in our society. Even Nehruji, who was not personally religious, recognized that. Indians are a very religious people. In fact, it was striking that when the Pew survey of global attitudes to religion was conducted.
That's the 2021 survey.
21. India came way out on top. We had something
97%.
like 97% of our people said they're religious. And it's gone down to the 70s in many Western countries. And I think in some it's even dropped as low as the 40s. So you're looking at a situation where, while religion is going out of favor slowly in so-called advanced societies, in ours, it's always had a strong appeal to people, which is why within our own political space, and even before I came into formal politics, I always used to argue that we are framing the debate wrong if we make it one between religion on the one hand and godless secularists on the other, because that, in India, we will always lose.
The problem is,
it seems to me, between accepting and respecting religion, but challenging the place it has been given in our politics.
I have a somewhat different viewpoint, and that is the following. Religion in the context of our history, and I can talk about Gandhiji and Nehru, what they conceived to be religion, was not religion as practiced today. It was dharma.
That's right.
Correct? Correct. So we are not talking about religion as we interpreted it today. So when you say that religion was already central to our national movement and politics, that was in the context of dharma, right? That was in the context of deen, right? Not in the context as we interpret religion today.
That's right.
And you are a historian. You're a historian. You go back to history. There is no word like religion in Latin. There is no word like religion in Greek, right?
I thought it came from religio.
No.
Tying together people.
No, that's different. But not religion as we understand it today.
So I think when you're talking about organized religion, you're talking about Maulvis and Pandits and faiths and so on. But even that is not what the BJP is all about today. They're about weaponizing religion as a marker of identity. It is actually a form of identity politics that the BJP is pursuing. And in fact, the very fact that Modi would go off and do the foundation stone Bhumi Puja for Parliament, that he would do the Prana Pratishtha, he is bypassing the established structures of religion. He's not a Purohit, not pretending to be one. He's not yielding place to the priest to do their job. He's saying it's the identity marker that Hinduism represents, that Hindutva is all about. So that's the way in which religion or religious identity is being applied that I would challenge.
That's correct. So therefore, as we understand religion, Gandhi's thoughts on religion, it was dharma, right? Absolutely. And he said, look, I am a religious person. And he also said there can't be politics without religion. And by religion, Hinduism, I mean dharma, right? And we are far removed from dharma today. Let me, in the context of what you said about the Prime Minister going and performing the Pran Pratishtha, if you look at our constitution, the right to freedom to propagate and profess your religion is given to citizens.
That's right.
Right? So, did he go there as a citizen? Or did you go there as holding a public office?
How can you separate the two? I mean, there's this big question because, as you know, I think Article 28, I think, specifically prohibits the spending of tax money on religion, on any religious activity. And you remember Nehruji, when Rajendra Prasad wanted to go to Somnath, said you can only go in your private capacity. You can't go as president because it's against the constitution. And Rajendra Prasad said, fine, I'll go as a private citizen. Though inevitably some of the security arrangements would have been made for a Rashtrapati involved taxpayers' money. Now, I suppose if we were to, I don't know, find out whether from RTI or whatever, who paid for Mr. Modi's transport to Varanasi,
but
that's a different question.
But the question...
But the taxpayers' money has definitely been used around this.
No, I am asking it in a different context. Even if taxpayer money is paid...
Well, that's officially not allowed.
Or not, it really doesn't matter. Because he is not performing the Pran Pratishtha as a citizen of the country. He happens to be the Prime Minister of India. The Prime Minister of India has no religion. He has a religion in his personal capacity. But qua his office, he cannot associate with any religion, right? And that's what the Constitution also says. If you look at Articles 26, 27, 28 of the Constitution, they say that a religious denomination can organize its affairs.
Of course.
Right? In other words, it's a religious denomination that can organize its affairs. But a prime minister cannot organize the affairs of a religious denomination.
Well, as you know, in this particular case, they created a trust. It was a trust that actually went ahead and constructed the temple, and the trust that invited...
He's not part of the trust.
But they can invite him as an individual to come?
No, but not to propagate, yes, but not for the purposes of performing the Pran Pratishtha.
That's precisely the debatable point. And I think ultimately the question is, how do we settle this? Do we go to court, or do we just...
No, we don't settle it at all. We have a conversation. And that's the way to settle it, to tell the people in this country that look how far we are removed.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And then, if you look at again, you're a historian, if you look at all the conflicts in the world that have happened, right? They have happened because of three things, I think. One is religion, two is territory, right? And three is language, right? And we are having conflicts with these things today, even in India.
Within India, yeah.
This is a very dangerous thing.
The thing about territory, of course, tends to be something where you claim...
No, within. Maharashtra says, this is my territory. No, I'm talking about something different. I'm not talking about people occupying Ladakh. No. I'm talking about territorial disputes within the country. This is Marathi speaking.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, now we've got Manipur.
Then you got
Manipur. Whole debate
right,
about...
so these are territorial disputes. And all violence in the world has taken place because of these three things.
No, that's a good point, Kapil. I mean, if you look at the overall place of religion in our society, it has certainly evolved. But religion as being the principal, let alone the sole determinant of your identity, is actually a new idea in Indian politics. Because you either had the idea that your Indianness subsumed everything, which was the idea embedded in the Constitution. I have argued, for example, in a book 25 years ago in India from Midnight to the Millennium, that we are all minorities in our own ways, but that the freedom to be ourselves is guaranteed by the sheltering carapace of the constitutional identity of Indianness. So that's one notion. Now, to some degree, there's the slightly more complicated notion Amartya Sen propagated, which is we all have identities, but we have multiple identities. So he says, when I'm visiting my college, that's my principal identity. I'm a Stephanian. You and I are Stephanians. When we go and watch India playing a cricket match, our identity is that of a cricket fan. When we go to a temple, our identity is that of a Hindu. So it depends on what we are doing and in which particular context we define our identity. Now, that's also an interesting idea, but you could argue that for many Indians, there was a hierarchy in these identities. And that, for example, for many Indians of every faith, their faith may have meant a more important identity than these college or fandom or business profession, whatever identities. But fair enough, that's still a valid way of looking at it. Instead, what we are now being told by the governments and by the ruling establishment, the ruling party, is that no, it is not even the religion or the temple that matters. It is that you are something, and that something is Hindu as we define it. You have therefore inherited a historical sense of victimhood because you have been aggressed and attacked and so on by others thousands of years, hundreds of years ago, and now you are asserting yourself in that capacity of being a Hindu. And the curious thing about this is how well this message has been accepted by large sections of people across the world.
I'm not too sure about that. Quite frankly, I'm not too sure about that. The message that seems to have been accepted is a message that suggests that a certain section of the community who has been ruling over us for years, they must pay for
the sins of their ancestors.
For the sins of their ancestors, right? And that's generating a kind of toxic environment in which violence is passé.
It's normalized.
It's normalized. Now, if you look at you look at the history of India, and this is something fascinating. I've been studying it for several years now. Why do you think India is secular, or was born secular?
Well,
do you have an answer for that?
Yes, I do, and my answer will not be liked by many. I would argue that civilizationally, Hinduism has embedded within it an idea that you could call secular, I prefer to call pluralist, but which essentially boils down to the same thing. If you look at Vivekananda's teachings, and I'm a huge Vivekananda bhakt since my teen years, what did he say? He stood up in Chicago and told the World Parliament of Religions that I am proud to speak to you of a faith which has taught the world not just tolerance but acceptance. I read this and it stayed in my head. He didn't explain it further there. But I was going to school and being told that tolerance is a virtue. A tolerant king is a good guy because he's letting you have different beliefs from his own. And so I kept wondering, why is this not enough for Vivekananda? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized he was right. Because the Hindu understands that tolerance is essentially a patronizing idea. It says, I have the truth. You are in error. But I will magnanimously indulge you in your right to be wrong. That's all tolerance is. Vivekananda teaches us that Hinduism is about acceptance, which says, I believe I have the truth. You believe you have the truth. I will respect your truth. Please respect my truth. And that is actually the fundamental basis on which, first of all, very many different forms of worship exist in Hinduism, where the Vaishnavite had to live with the Shaivite. There were conflicts at various times, but they had to accept different ways of worshipping God. And then in turn, when others came, when the Jews came, why is it that the only anti-Semitic diaspora, the only Semitic diaspora in the entire world that has never known a single instance of anti-Semitic persecution by the host population has been the Jews of India? Because they were accepted. Same with the Parsis, same with the Muslims in the south.
True, but Shashi,
and same with the Christians
there's
as well.
A historical genesis to this.
Yes.
That's what I was talking about.
And the history varies from north south. No?
Historical genesis is that when people moved here from Asia, Central Asia, there was no other place to go to. There was no other place to go to because you couldn't reach China because of the mountains. Right? You couldn't go anywhere else for better climes. And so there were swathes and swathes over centuries of people coming into India of all kinds of, denominations, right? Different races, different castes, different cultures, different languages. So historically, if you look at the genesis, India had to be secular, had to be pluralistic. It's the nature. Therefore, Vivekananda said nothing more than what history tells us would have happened in India in any case. So we are essentially, as a nation, pluralistic because we were born pluralistic.
I agree entirely. And by the way, Nehru would agree with you. That is the civilizational idea of India that he celebrated. He called it a palimpsest.
So they are destroying that. My point today is they are trying to destroy that pluralistic idea of India, which has its genesis in history. And that's something very, very worrisome. And I'll tell you, the problem is, This will not, ultimately it may get them short-term advantage, but it will ultimately not win them the real battle for humanism. Ultimately, this is a battle for humanism. We have to fight for the values on which this country was born.
You're using a loaded word because humanism, as you remember, was Deen Dayal Upadhyay's word, integral humanism. And his concept had good elements in it, but was also quite divisive in that it preached the superiority of a particular approach derived from Hindu thought.
It's not humanism.
Which is precisely the challenge. But if you come back to what I was saying, I don't think you and I are disagreeing with each other. History gave us that, but our civilization was anchored in a set of philosophies that accommodated itself to this reality of diversity.
Correct.
So, for example, Vivekananda used to be very fond of quoting a particular verse, the Shiva Mahimna Stotram, which says that as many rivers flow, some straight, some winding, some down mountains, some down valleys, but end up at the same sea, so also all forms of worship end up at the same divine. You know what people often forget is that the original Vedic idea of God was actually not very different from the Islamic idea. It was God that could not be imagined, could not be seen,
Except
could not
that
be
it
touched,
was not
no gender, no
except
shape.
for monotheistic.
The Nirguna Brahman, the God without qualities, was the initial Vedic idea. But these rishis realized over centuries that ordinary people couldn't relate to that. They were worshipping mountains and rivers and trees, and they said, this won't do. We're not going to let the great majesty of our philosophy be reduced to animism. So that's when they came up with the idea of the Saguna Brahman and said, worship God in whatever form you like, because no one has any authoritative claim to saying God looks like this or looks like that. He can be anything you want. So according to the rishis, if you want to imagine God as a pot-bellied man with an elephant head, that's fine. You want to imagine God as a 10-armed woman riding a tiger, that's fine. But by the same logic, if you want to imagine God as a bleeding man suffering on a cross, that's fine too. And that is the Hindu and Indian approach to religion, which honestly is extraordinarily welcoming and accepting.
I entirely agree with you. Now let's go back to something slightly different, because my thesis is that there is a conflict between my right to propagate my religion and the denomination's right to manage its affairs. There is an essential conflict there, but I'll come to that later. If you look at the history of Europe, for example, you will find that the papal states wanted to control all of Europe, right? And the princes didn't agree, and there was a big conflict that happened. And all of 16th, 17th century, about 35% of the European population was lost because of religious wars, right? But what happens is the papacy lost control just as the caliphate lost control.
Eventually. But
Why did that happen? That happens, I think, because the steam engine was discovered in 1786. When the steam engine was discovered in 1986, 1786, it led to the atomization of rights, right? Led to commerce, led to trade, and suddenly trade became far more important over the years.
But there was trade earlier, no? Don't forget
It's the mobility. It's the mobility. I'm not talking trade, of course there was there, right from ancient times. It's the mobility of being able to send goods quickly, to sell quickly, to communicate quickly. Ultimately, now we have a revolution in which, in fact, it's one world today, right? So it is the movement from 1786 to the one world that we have today, right? And that's why you had the revolutions of 1848. You had the princes were thrown out, the kings
Meiji
were thrown
Restoration
out,
in Japan.
right? Everything happened.
But the thing, Kapil, with this theory is that there is nonetheless a backlash to it. So what you're arguing would essentially militate against the evolution of any authority figure, not just a pope or a religious leader.
Absolutely.
Any authority, but in fact, politically, this is also an era where authoritarianism is again on the rise.
That's for different reasons. That's for different reasons. I'll tell you why. Because capitalism has not delivered. So that's a separate debate altogether. That's a separate debate, and we can discuss that later.
To say that authority figures are being challenged by technology, whether it's steamships or computers or whatever, misses the point of how is it then that in so many countries, one after the other, people are looking to authority figures to either, but they're not religious authority figures.
You're not realizing that the new kings and the new, the satraps and the czars will be Google and Amazon in the years to come. This is my final
That's a longer debate. But if you're a Hungarian, you're living with an Orban. If you're in Turkey, you're living under an Erdogan. If you're in America,
I understand all that.
And in Britain, you've had Brexit.
That's the backlash. That's the backlash.
Backlash is real.
That's the backlash that you've not been able to deliver. Well, what's happening is that, in an economy which is open, people come from other parts of the country and other parts of Europe to work somewhere else. And it results.
Okay, but let's bring it back to India, Kapil. There was, since we talked about the earlier Pew survey, there's another Pew survey from last year, where they actually studied attitudes towards democracy and authoritarianism in 23 or 24,
Yes,
24 countries. 85% of Indians said they prefer an authoritarian system with a leader who didn't have to worry about the differences of opinion with the parliament or a judge.
See, that's the enlightened despot. That's the concept of the enlightened.
So there is a yearning for an authority figure amongst, I don't know what their sample base is, I don't know if they were mainly urban, whether it's the complacent middle class, but it does worry me a little bit that we can't take for granted that technology is moving us away from authoritarianism. I fear it is growing, and in our own country today, what is Mr. Modi trying to do? He's conveying this impression of certitude and inevitability, even in these coming elections. As you and I have talked privately, I don't believe that he can even match the numbers he won in 2019. But he's talking about even a larger number to convey a sense that he is irresistible, unstoppable, because he believes that people want somebody who is beyond, who cannot be challenged.
That's again takes us back to the patriarchal nature of our society, right? Our society is not as atomized as in Europe. Right? And I think that will take some time. And forget about the Prime Minister or Modi. Talk about our ordinary families. They continue to be patriarchal. Talk about our corporate culture. It continues to be patriarchal. Talk about our education culture. It continues to be patriarchal. Right? So patriarchal culture is embedded in Indian society. And therefore, perhaps Pew Survey says what it says. But the fact of the matter is that ultimately we have to move away from that, and we will move away from that. It may take some time, but that's what it is. But this is a fascinating debate. Let me move on to another subject, a subject that's dear to my heart because, I've always been a congressman at heart. What's going to happen to the India alliance?
To the alliance? Look, I've always been stressing to the media when I'm asked this, that you've got to understand it was always meant to be a state-by-state deal. It could never have been a one-size-fits-all
I'm not the media.
alliance.
I'm not the
No,
media.
but I'm talking to you as a friend as well, Kapil. It could, look at my own situation in Kerala. For 55, 60 years now, we've been at daggers drawn between the LDF, led by the communists, and the UDF, led by the Congress. And the two forces have no willingness to discuss compatibility. Now, there would have been no question of even starting an alliance conversation. Yet in Delhi, these parties are together. Just next door in Tamil Nadu, the CPM and CPI from the LDF and Congress and the Muslim League from UDF are together and working with the DMK in a very amicable arrangement, which no one is seriously questioning, where undoubtedly we'll go forward to the 24 election without an alliance in Kerala and with an alliance in Tamil Nadu next door to each other. What's wrong with that?
I'm not worried about that at all. In fact, I've been saying myself right from the beginning, when people were saying there'll be no alliances, I said there will be alliances.
Yes.
Alliance is not a problem.
Then what's the problem?
Problem is, what is it that you want to tell the people of this country?
So at the end of the day,
that's really the crucial issue.
At the end of the day, for example, whether it's the CPM in Kerala or Aam Aadmi Party in Punjab, at the end of the day, whatever the result, when we assemble in Delhi to see our numbers in Parliament, we are going to be all united against the BJP.
That I know.
And that's enough.
Yeah, but you have to campaign, no? You have to campaign. What is it that you're going to campaign for?
So for me, there are a number of issues, but again, Kerala may be different from the North. One of the very, very key issues is, of course, the values we stand for, including pluralism, diversity, protecting the diversity of India, which the BJP
where is that
eroding.
platform, Shashi? Where is that platform happening? Where are those people getting together, all opposition leaders talking about these things?
This is being talked about. But
No,
I'll
I'm
come to it.
sorry.
It's going to be in our manifesto as well.
Yes.
But the second
Or
thing,
it's a Congress manifesto. We should have an India Alliance manifesto.
that will come next, because the point is
Next
that
is when?
becomes a common minimum program.
When?
Look, I'm not the person to ask, I'm not involved in that
It's too
negotiation.
late already.
But let me come. You've also got, undoubtedly, an economic message. I mean, the old Clinton 1992 slogan of "It's the economy, stupid" applies in India because we have a ridiculously high unemployment level. If you look at the age group in 20 and 24,
29% unemployment.
29% is
Between
bad
20
enough,
and
Kapil.
29.
But no, between 20 and 24, it's 45.4%.
There it is, there
and
it
that's the job starting age group. So every second person looking for a job isn't getting one. Third, we've actually seen a decline in income in the bottom 80% of our population since the note bandi and the.
May I make a suggestion, Shashi? I understand that. People know. People know. I want to make a suggestion. You can tell your people in the India Alliance. The suggestion is the following: just nominate 3-4 spokesperson for India Alliance. Right?
Instead of for each party.
Let them stand for the India Alliance. Let them match Modi on a daily basis on the statements that he makes. And that will go both in the mainstream media, because elections are on, and on your channels and your social media platforms. That will make a huge difference. Shashi Tharoor may say these things on a program, but when a nominee of the India Alliance says it, it has far greater value. And you can have just 20 people in a research team, get together, have 3 or 4 people who you wish to choose. They should be articulate, Hindi and English, and then project what India Alliance will do in the context of what's happening. And unless you do that, I'm afraid you're saying this, what you're saying, and somebody else saying something else, not going to matter. This is my own belief.
You may well be right. I mean, the thing is that it all depends. In Delhi, I think you can actually have one unified message. The moment you get down to the state level, you have a bit of a challenge because each state is
national message. Yeah, what do you stand for?
That's right.
What does this alliance stand for?
What is our common maximum program?
Yeah, exactly. What is our vision for India? I mean, in the sense, look at it from at least my standpoint. If I were part of that, what would I say?
You are part of it. I think you've attended the alliance.
I am, but I'm on the borderline, as they say. Right? Sometimes I'm allowed entry. Sometimes I'm told to stay at the border. But it's not a personal issue. If I were the India Alliance and I had anything to do with it, I'd say the 2 things that are most important in India is education and health.
That's true. For most ordinary families and jobs.
And jobs. That once there is education, jobs will come. But job, of course, is the present. I'm talking about the future. Right? Now, in education, you have a huge challenge to meet. And that challenge is that you have a degree, but you are entirely unskilled. The 21st century will require skilled labor force. You're doing nothing to get that skilled labor force on the ground. And ask Modi questions, what has he done for 10 years?
I asked in the budget speech in Parliament, I pointed out that we had, in 2014, 2.3% of our workforce was deemed to be skilled. Today, 10 years later, the figure is 2.4%. That's all there is.
So therefore, that's a very dangerous situation to be in. So when Modi talks about all the wonderful things he has done, yes, I think that he is part of the creamy layer of India. But I want people at the bottom of the pyramid to be skilled so that they can live their lives with dignity. At the moment, that's not happening. So those are the messages that you need to send to the people of this country.
Absolutely. And we need to tell people, hey, vote for your own self-interest.
Exactly.
If you're happy with the mandir, wonderful, but you're not elected the government to build mandirs. You've elected the government
to... The mandir will not give you skills. It will give you skills to fool people.
The government has been elected to look after your economic well-being. That is why a government is elected.
So
if they have not done their job, why should you vote?
Why hasn't the India Alliance thought of this?
Well, I've been saying this in my interviews, Governor.
No, I'm not talking about it at an individual level. Why isn't the Alliance thinking of these things? This is the most important thing. You'll not be able to match Modi unless you do that.
I agree.
Right?
This is the most important message in my life.
Right. And quite frankly, with the young population, this will attract the younger people of India. And if you don't do that, I think you'll be in a mess. And your messages have to be different in different parts of the country, both in terms of education, because the levels of education are entirely different. The needs are different. Right. What you need to do in Manipur, what you need to do in Himachal, what you need to do in Maharashtra is entirely different. Where the manufacturing capacities are there, there's a different form of skill development, right? In the telecom sector, there's a different form of skill development. So what you need to do, what is your plan? These are things that you need to think about.
Yeah.
Hua nahi hai.
No, it should be. Look, I mean, the thing is, at the moment, the campaigns are being led principally by individual parties. Rahul Gandhi is on his yatra, which some parties have joined at various stages, but and then we've got...
I have nothing against the yatra, but I think we must gear up to fight this election now. because the time has come to actually...
And we are only a few days away from the announcement of the dates.
And the problem, of course, the other big problem is that with all these institutions being decimated and the ED and the CBI being targeting all the leaders,
completely,
you're going to have a lot of trouble, and you need spokespersons there to actually tell the people what's happening to those leaders, like I did Kwe, Hemant Soren. And there are so many such ugly stories as without evidence these people are being targeted only for political reasons. So they are using two things. They are using the platform of Hindutva, which has nothing to do with dharma, and they are using the investigating agencies to destroy the reputations of people.
Correct. And there's another insidious thing that's happening is the delegitimization of opposition. If opposition can be denounced regularly as anti-national, if criticism of Hindutva is equated to being anti-Hindu, ultimately you're illegitimate. Everything you're saying and doing is against the nation's interests. How do you survive?
In fact, whatever they are doing, I'm sorry to say, if you really weigh the scales of being anti-national, the scales are much heavier on their side.
Oh, I agree with you. Absolutely.
If anybody is anti-national in the context of today's environment, it is not us and what we stand for.
I agree. But this is the messaging that they're trying to get away with.
But what about your messaging? What about your messaging?
Look, as you rightly say, I don't have the position to do anything but speak for myself.
Neither do I. So it's my angst and my worry, because I want an India which is united. We both want an India that becomes great over the years. We want an India that is together. We want an India that is tolerant. We want Vivekananda's India, and we have Modi's India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kapil.